After 8 years working overseas, Marcus Hale returned to North Carolina with a suitcase full of gifts and a heart full of guilt. He expected his mother to open the door of the small house he had paid for every month. Instead, he found her asleep on the front porch, wrapped in an old coat, her medication bottle empty beside her, while laughter drifted from inside the home that still carried his family name. When she opened her eyes and saw him, she didn't smile. She grabbed his wrist and whispered, "Don't let your aunt know you're here." In that moment, Marcus knew his mother had been hiding far more than loneliness. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. 8 years earlier, Marcus had believed distance could still be love. For most of those years, he had lived under the relentless heat of Dubai, managing construction projects that seemed to grow taller every month. The work was demanding, the hours were brutal, and home felt farther away with every passing season. Yet every month, without fail, money left his account and went to his mother. That was his promise. Lillian Hale had spent her entire life putting other people first. After her husband died, she never asked anyone for help. She worked, saved, sacrificed, and somehow always sounded cheerful whenever Marcus called. "Don't worry about me," she would say, and he believed her. The flight home had felt different this time. Marcus had finally taken extended leave. He had gifts packed carefully in his suitcase, a warm blanket, new walking shoes, a digital photo frame loaded with pictures from his years abroad. He wanted to surprise her. He imagined her opening the front door and laughing through tears. Instead, he stood frozen in the driveway. The house looked tired. The paint was peeling from the porch rails. Weeds pushed through cracks in the walkway. The flower beds Lillian once cared for so proudly had become patches of dry dirt, and there she was, sleeping outside. For a few seconds, Marcus couldn't move. His mother looked thinner than he remembered. Her face seemed smaller somehow, frailer. The old coat covering her shoulders looked at least 2 sizes too large. "Mama," he whispered. That was when she woke up. Recognition flashed in her eyes, then fear. Not joy. Fear. She immediately sat upright and glanced toward the house. "Marcus?" she said softly. He dropped to his knees beside her. "What happened?" Instead of answering, she looked toward the front door again. "Keep your voice down." The words sent a chill through him. Before he could ask another question, the front door opened. A woman stepped outside carrying a mug of coffee. Denise, his aunt. For a split second, surprise crossed her face. Then it disappeared behind a bright smile. "Marcus," she exclaimed. "Why didn't you tell anyone you were coming?" Marcus slowly stood. "What's going on here?" Denise laughed nervously. "Oh, nothing. Your mother likes sitting outside." Marcus stared at her. "She was asleep out here. She enjoys the fresh air." The explanation sounded ridiculous even before she finished saying it. Denise stepped aside as another figure appeared in the doorway. Her husband, Ray. He offered an awkward wave. "Good to see you, Marcus." Something about the scene felt wrong. The way Denise stood on the porch as if she belonged there. The way Ray leaned against the door frame like the owner of the property. The way Lillian lowered her eyes whenever either of them spoke. Marcus looked past them into the house. Furniture had been moved. Family photographs were gone. Even the curtains looked different. His stomach tightened. "When did you two move in?" he asked. Denise exchanged a quick glance with Ray. "Oh, it's a long story, I've got time." The smile on her face weakened. "Your mother needed help," Lillian suddenly spoke. "I'm fine." The words came out automatically, almost like a reflex. Marcus turned toward her. No, she wasn't fine. The medication bottle beside her was empty. Her hands trembled slightly. Her cheeks looked hollow. And then he noticed something else. The mailbox near the porch stood open. Stuffed inside were envelopes addressed to Denise and Ray. None carried his mother's name. A strange feeling settled in his chest. "Where's your phone?" he asked Lillian. She hesitated. "I don't use it much anymore." "That's not what I asked." Silence. Marcus looked at Denise. "Where's her phone?" Denise folded her arms. "It broke months ago, and nobody replaced it. We had other priorities." The answer hit him harder than he expected. For 8 years he had sent money. A lot of money. Enough that a broken phone should never have been a problem. Enough that his mother should never have been sleeping on a porch. As the afternoon sun lowered across the yard, Marcus felt the first cracks forming in the story he had believed for years. Then his eyes landed on a stack of prescription papers sitting near the door. Past due, past due, past due. His pulse quickened. Why haven't these been paid? Nobody answered immediately. Denise looked away. Ray suddenly found the ground very interesting, and Lillian looked ashamed, as if she had done something wrong. Marcus crouched beside her again. "Mama," he said gently, "tell me what happened." Her eyes filled with tears. For a moment she seemed ready to speak. Then she looked toward the house, toward Denise, toward Ray, and fear returned to her face. "Please," she whispered, "don't start a fight. I'm not leaving until I understand." Lillian's shoulders began to shake. Marcus took her hand. "What are you afraid of?" The tears finally spilled down her cheeks. She stared at the porch floor for several long seconds. Then she said the words that changed everything. "The papers are already signed." Marcus frowned. "What papers?" Lillian covered her face. A broken sob escaped her lips. When she finally looked up at him, her voice was barely audible. "They said you told me to do it." Marcus stared at his mother as if the words had come from somewhere outside the porch, somewhere impossible. "They said I told you to do it?" he asked. Lillian wiped her face with the sleeve of her old coat. Her hand shook as she did it, and that small movement hurt him more than the tears. Marcus had seen men collapse from heat on construction sites. He had watched steel beams swing above his head in desert wind. None of it had prepared him for the sight of his mother looking afraid to speak on her own porch. Denise stepped forward quickly. "Lillian, that's enough. You're confused." Marcus turned his head slowly. "Don't." The single word stopped her. Ray shifted behind Denise, rubbing one hand over his jaw. He looked uncomfortable but not surprised. That mattered. Marcus noticed it and stored it away. Lillian tried to stand, but her legs were weak. Marcus helped her up with both hands. She was lighter than he remembered, not in the normal way people changed with age, but in the way people became when meals had been skipped and worry had eaten what food could not. She leaned into him for 1 second, then pulled back, embarrassed by her own need. "I don't want trouble," she said. "You didn't make trouble," Marcus replied. "Someone else did." Denise gave a brittle laugh. "You come home after 8 years and suddenly you know everything. We've been the ones here. We've taken her to appointments. We've handled bills. We've kept this house from falling apart while you sent money from overseas and called that being a son." The words landed because part of them was true. Marcus felt the sting of it, but he did not look away. Shame could wait. His mother could not. "If you handled the bills," he said, picking up the stack of prescription notices by the door, "why are these unpaid?" Denise's mouth tightened. "Insurance delays, all of them? It's complicated." Marcus looked at the empty medication bottle beside the porch chair. "Where is the new prescription?" Lillian whispered, "I was going to pick it up next week. The label says it ran out 12 days ago." Denise's eyes flashed. "You have no idea how hard it's been. Your mother refuses to cooperate. She hides things. She says she wants fresh air, then people act like we're monsters because she sits outside." "Sits outside?" Marcus repeated. "She was sleeping out here. She has always been stubborn." Lillian lowered her head again, and Marcus saw the pattern clearly. Every time Denise spoke, Lillian made herself smaller, not because she agreed, because she had learned that silence cost less. Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket. "I'm taking her somewhere tonight." Denise's smile vanished. "You can't just do that." Marcus looked at her. "Watch me," Ray finally spoke. "Marcus, maybe everybody needs to calm down. Denise didn't mean it like that. I'm not asking what Denise meant." Ray glanced at Lillian, then back at Marcus. "Your mom's been through a lot. Moving her suddenly might not be good. Sleeping on a porch without medication isn't good either." For the first time, Lillian squeezed Marcus's hand. It was not a strong grip, but it was deliberate. A small act of choice. "Just for tonight," she said quietly. "I'll go just for tonight." Denise stared at her. "Lillian." The warning in her voice was soft, but Marcus heard it. So did Lillian, and this time Lillian did not lower her eyes. She looked at Denise for one brief second, then looked back at her son. "I need my purse." No one moved. Marcus stepped toward the front door, but Denise blocked him. "I'll get it," she said. "No," Marcus answered. "She will." Denise's face hardened. For a moment the pleasant aunt disappeared and something colder stood in her place. Then she stepped aside. Inside, the house smelled like coffee, fried food, and lemon cleaner. It did not smell like his mother anymore. The framed quilt that used to hang above the couch was gone. His father's old recliner was gone. Even the family Bible that had always sat on the side table was missing. Lillian walked slowly toward the hallway. Marcus stayed close but did not rush her. Ray remained by the door. Denise followed behind them too close. The bedroom at the end of the hall was no longer Lillian's. Marcus saw that immediately. Denise's clothes hung over a chair. Ray's work boots sat near the closet. A large television was mounted across from the bed. Lillian did not even look inside. Instead, she turned toward the small guest room. Marcus followed her. A narrow cot stood against one wall. A cardboard box sat beside it. Inside were folded sweaters, a hairbrush, an old church bulletin, and a few envelopes tied together with a rubber band. Her purse was under the cot. Marcus stared at the room. "This is where you sleep?" Lillian's mouth trembled. "Sometimes." Behind him, Denise sighed loudly. She wanted a smaller room. The stairs were bothering her. This house doesn't have stairs. The silence that followed was small but sharp. Lillian picked up her purse and held it against her chest. As she did, one of the envelopes slipped from the box and fell open. Marcus bent to pick it up. Denise moved faster. "I'll take that." Marcus lifted the envelope before she could reach it. It was addressed to Lillian Hale. The return address was from his bank. The envelope had been opened. Marcus looked at Denise. "Why is my mother's bank mail in a box under a cot?" Denise's voice went flat. "Because she loses things." Marcus pulled out the paper inside. It was a notice about a transfer account ending in 4 digits he did not recognize. His body went cold. For years he had sent money to the account Denise had helped set up after Lillian supposedly had trouble with online banking. He had never questioned it. Denise had sounded so practical then, so helpful. She had said Lillian hated passwords, hated apps, hated calling customer service. Marcus had been grateful someone was there. Now he looked at his mother's cot and felt that gratitude turn to ash. "Do you have a bank card?" he asked Lillian. She swallowed. "Denise keeps it safe." Marcus turned. Denise lifted her chin. "For bills. Give it to her. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple." Ray stepped closer. "Marcus, don't make this ugly." Marcus looked at him. "It already is." Lillian reached into her purse with trembling fingers and removed a folded pharmacy receipt. She held it out to Marcus without looking at anyone else. It was dated 3 weeks earlier. At the bottom, in red print, were the words, "Payment declined." Marcus read it once, then again. His mother had tried to pay for her medication and had been denied access to money he had sent to keep her safe. He folded the receipt carefully and put it in his pocket. Denise noticed. "What are you doing? Keeping it? You don't need to keep anything. I do now." That was when Marcus saw something else in the box. A thin folder with a county seal on the corner. Lillian saw his eyes move toward it and went pale. "Mama," he said quietly, "what is that?" She shook her head. "Not here." Denise reached for the folder, but Marcus took it first. Inside was a copy of a legal document. Several pages, formal language, a property reference, Lillian's name, Denise's name, Ray's name, and near the bottom of the first page, Marcus saw his own name, not as a witness, not as a contact. As someone who had supposedly approved the arrangement. His throat tightened. "What is this?" Lillian began to cry again, silently this time. Denise said, "It's nothing you need to worry about." Marcus looked up from the page. "My name is on it." Denise's face changed. Only for a second, but long enough. Marcus looked back at the document, and the words seemed to blur in front of him. He had flown across the world thinking he had failed his mother by not visiting sooner. Now he was beginning to understand that someone had used his absence like a key. He turned to Lillian. "Did you sign this?" She pressed a hand to her mouth. "Mama." Her voice came out broken. "I signed because they said the house had already been moved. They said you knew. They said you wanted Denise to handle everything." Marcus stared at the paper again. Then he saw the final line. A notarized approval bearing his digital signature. A signature he had never given. Marcus stared at the digital signature for a long moment. It looked convincing. The shape of the letters was close enough. The spacing was right. Even the initials matched how he usually signed documents electronically. If he had seen it in an email years ago, he might have accepted it without a second thought. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had never signed this. He slipped the document back into the folder and closed it carefully. "I'm taking these," he said. Denise immediately stepped forward. "You can't remove legal documents from this house." My mother's name is on them. It's not that simple. Marcus looked at her. You keep saying that. For the first time, Denise seemed unsure of herself. Not frightened, just cautious, as if Marcus had stepped onto ground she never expected him to reach. 20 minutes later, Marcus loaded his mother's small box of belongings into a rental SUV parked outside. It wasn't much. A purse, a few sweaters, some medication bottles. A framed photo of Lillian and her late husband taken decades ago. That was what remained of a lifetime. Lillian sat quietly in the passenger seat while Marcus secured the last bag. Denise stood on the porch with her arms folded. Running away won't solve anything, she called out. Marcus shut the rear door. Neither will stealing from an elderly woman. Denise's face hardened. Ray opened his mouth as if he wanted to intervene, then thought better of it. Marcus got into the driver's seat and pulled away without another word. For several miles neither he nor Lillian spoke. The silence felt heavy but not uncomfortable. It felt exhausted. Finally, Lillian looked out the window and whispered, "She's still my sister's daughter." Marcus tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "She put you on a cot, I know. She kept your bank card, I know. She left your medication unpaid." Lillian closed her eyes. "I know." Marcus wanted to keep going. Instead, he stopped, because beneath every answer was the same thing: shame. Not Denise's, Lillian's, and that hurt more. An hour later, they checked into a modest hotel near town. Nothing fancy, just a clean room with 2 beds, fresh sheets, and a door that locked. When Lillian stepped inside, she froze. Marcus noticed it immediately. "You okay?" She nodded. But she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the room, the lamp, the television, the clean blankets, the small coffee maker. Ordinary things. Things nobody should have to earn the right to enjoy. Marcus turned away for a moment because suddenly he couldn't trust his expression. That night he ordered soup, grilled chicken, and mashed potatoes from a nearby diner. Lillian ate slowly, very slowly, not because she disliked the food, because she had gotten used to making meals last. Marcus noticed every detail: the way she folded her napkin neatly, the way she saved half a dinner roll, the way she apologized when she asked for more water. The anger inside him deepened. After dinner, he spread the documents across the small desk near the window. Lillian watched nervously. "You should rest," she said. "I'll rest later." Marcus opened his laptop. Years of managing projects had taught him one thing: never trust assumptions. Check records, check dates, check everything. He logged into his banking account. Transfer after transfer appeared. Monthly deposits. Regular amounts. 8 years' worth of support. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then he noticed the account number. The same account every single transfer. He zoomed in. The last 4 digits matched the account listed in one of the papers from the box. The account Denise had supposedly set up to help Lillian manage finances. Marcus sat back. A bad feeling settled into his stomach. "Mom." Lillian looked up. "When Denise helped with your banking, did you ever see statements?" "Sometimes." "Did you ever go to the bank?" "Not much." "Why?" Lillian hesitated. Denise usually handled things. The answer came too quickly. Like something repeated many times, Marcus opened another document, then another, then another. A pattern emerged. Several notices referenced a family trust, not ownership, not direct transfer, a trust, which meant somebody had tried to move assets under a legal structure. That complicated things. But it also created a paper trail, and paper trails could be followed. Near midnight, Marcus made 3 calls. The first went to his attorney in Charlotte. The second went to a financial consultant he trusted. The third went to an old college friend who now worked in banking compliance. He left messages for all 3. By morning, he had 2 callbacks. The attorney agreed to review everything. The banking contact sounded concerned immediately. "Don't accuse anyone yet," he warned. "Just gather records." Marcus intended to do exactly that. The next morning he drove to the local bank branch where Lillian's account had originally been opened. The branch manager, a woman named Patricia Monroe, greeted them politely. After verifying Lillian's identity, Patricia reviewed the account history. Her expression changed, not dramatically, just enough. Marcus noticed. "What is it?" he asked. Patricia chose her words carefully. "There have been several changes to account permissions over the years." "What kind of changes?" "Authorized users, mailing addresses, notification settings." Marcus felt his pulse increase. "Who made the changes?" Patricia looked at Lillian, then back at him. "Most appear to have been requested by a designated representative." Denise, I can't discuss details without proper authorization forms. Marcus nodded. Fair enough. Rules existed for a reason. Patricia printed several documents they were legally entitled to receive. One page caught Marcus's attention immediately. A mailing address change 3 years ago. The address no longer pointed to Lillian's room, or even the house itself. It redirected correspondence to a private mailbox in town. Marcus looked at his mother. Did you know about this? Lillian shook her head. No. Patricia watched them quietly. Then she said something unexpected. Mr. Hale, there is something else. Marcus looked up. What? Patricia hesitated. Several years ago, your mother attempted to reverse one of the authorization changes. The room seemed to become very still. What happened? She submitted paperwork. Marcus leaned forward, and Patricia lowered her voice. The request was withdrawn 2 days later. Withdrawn by who? Patricia couldn't answer. Not without additional records, not yet, but she printed the reference number. Marcus took it. Another piece of the puzzle. Another thread. Outside the bank, Lillian seemed shaken. You tried to change it back. She stared at the ground. Why didn't you tell me? Tears filled her eyes. Because they said I would lose everything. Marcus felt something inside him harden. Not anger. Determination. Someone had frightened his mother into surrendering control of her own life. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That wasn't family conflict. That was something else. That afternoon, he met with the attorney. They reviewed every document, every notice, every signature, every transfer. The lawyer studied the trust paperwork for several minutes. Then he looked up. Marcus, what? This digital signature approval. Marcus nodded. I never signed it, I believe you. The attorney tapped a specific line. Because according to this record, the authorization happened through a remote verification session. Marcus frowned. What does that mean? It means somebody appeared on video and confirmed the transaction. The room fell silent. Marcus stared at him. What? The attorney turned the document toward him. There was a remote identity verification. Marcus's chest tightened. The date sat clearly at the top of the page. He recognized it instantly. That date. That exact date. He hadn't even been in the United States. He had been standing on a construction site outside Dubai supervising a project inspection attended by dozens of workers and contractors. There was no possible way he could have participated in a video verification. No possible way. The attorney looked at him carefully. Marcus, if you can prove where you were that day, this becomes a very different case. Marcus stared at the page, then at the date again. And for the first time since returning home, a terrifying possibility became impossible to ignore. Someone hadn't simply manipulated his mother. Someone had pretended to be him. The possibility followed Marcus home that night like a shadow. Someone had appeared on a video call pretending to be him. Not accidentally, not carelessly, deliberately. His attorney had already begun preparing requests for additional records, but legal processes moved slowly. Marcus understood that. Construction projects, contracts, inspections, everything important took time, yet every instinct in him wanted answers now. Back at the hotel, Lillian sat by the window watching the parking lot lights flicker on. She looked tired, not physically tired, emotionally tired. The kind of exhaustion that came from carrying fear for too many years. Marcus set a cup of tea beside her. You should get some sleep. She gave him a faint smile. I've slept enough lately. The words hurt because he knew exactly where she had been sleeping. Neither mentioned the porch, neither needed to. After a few moments, Marcus sat across from her. Mama, when did Denise move into the house permanently? Lillian looked down at her hands. About 4 years ago. Why? She said she wanted to help. Did you ask her to? A long silence followed. Finally, Lillian shook her head. No. Marcus leaned back. That answer mattered. Not because it proved anything legally. Because it revealed how everything had started, not with force, with permission, or at least the appearance of permission. Did she help at first? Lillian nodded. She took me to appointments, paid bills, organized paperwork. What changed? Lillian's eyes became distant. Little things. Marcus waited. The mail stopped coming to me. Another pause. Then she started handling phone calls. Another. Then she said some documents were easier if she signed for me. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach, a slow takeover, one step at a time, nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, exactly the way these situations happened. Before he could ask another question, his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown local number. Marcus answered. Hello? No response, only breathing. Then the line disconnected. He stared at the screen. A few seconds later, another message arrived. Unknown number. Leave it alone. Marcus read it twice, then saved a screenshot. Lillian noticed his expression. What happened? Nothing. She immediately knew he was lying. But she didn't press. Because whatever fear lived inside her had already guessed the answer. The next morning, Marcus drove to the county records office. If someone had forged his identity, there had to be a trail somewhere. Paperwork, approvals, witnesses, something. The building itself was ordinary. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, a few people waiting quietly at public terminals. After submitting identification and property informations, Marcus spent nearly 2 hours reviewing records connected to the Hale property. Most were routine. Tax filings, property assessments, ownership history. Then something unusual appeared. A trust registration, exactly as the attorney suspected, the Hale Family Preservation Trust. Marcus frowned. The name alone felt strange. His mother had never used language like that. He requested copies. While waiting, he reviewed filing details. One line immediately caught his attention. The trust had not been prepared by Denise. It had been prepared by an attorney, a local attorney. Name, Carl Jennings. Marcus stared at it, the same name appearing on the remote verification records, the same man connected to the notary process. Too many coincidences. By lunchtime, he was standing outside a modest law office near downtown. Carl Jennings and Associates. Marcus entered. A receptionist greeted him politely. Do you have an appointment? No, I'm sorry, Mr. Jennings is busy. Marcus placed a copy of the trust filing on the desk. Tell him Marcus Hale is here. The receptionist glanced at the paper. Her expression changed slightly. 10 minutes later, Marcus sat across from Carl Jennings. The man looked to be in his late 50s. Gray hair, expensive watch, careful smile. The kind of professional who spent years learning how not to reveal anything. Mr. Hale, Carl said pleasantly. How can I help you? Marcus placed the trust documents on the desk. You prepared these. Carl looked at them briefly. I may have. I'd need to review the file. You notarized them too. I handle many documents. Marcus leaned forward. My mother was sleeping on a porch while someone used my identity to transfer control of her assets. Carl's smile weakened, only slightly, but Marcus saw it. I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Did you verify my identity during the remote session? Carl folded his hands. I followed all required procedures. Did you personally speak to me? I spoke to the individual who presented identification. Marcus stared at him. The individual wasn't me. For the first time, silence entered the room. Carl looked away, toward the window, toward the bookshelf. Anywhere but Marcus. Interesting. Very interesting. You should discuss legal concerns with your attorney, Carl finally said. Marcus stood. I plan to. As he turned toward the door, Carl spoke again. Mr. Hale. Marcus stopped. There are things about this family you may not understand. Marcus slowly looked back. What does that mean? Carl seemed to reconsider. Then he shook his head. Nothing. But it clearly wasn't nothing. Outside the office, Marcus remained in his car for several minutes. The attorney knew something. Not necessarily about the forgery, about the family, about Denise. Maybe about his mother, something. His phone vibrated. This time it was his attorney. Marcus, I found something. Marcus immediately answered. What? The trust documents list a secondary witness. Marcus straightened. A witness? Yes. Who? Paper shuffled on the other end. Then his attorney read the name. Tessa Morgan. Marcus frowned. I don't know any Tessa Morgan. Apparently she's listed as a family relative. The words lingered. Family relative. Marcus had never heard the name, not once, not at birthdays, not during holidays, not during calls with his mother. Nothing. Can you send me everything? Marcus asked. It's already on the way. An hour later the documents arrived by email. Marcus opened them inside the hotel room. Lillian sat nearby reading quietly. He studied the witness page. Tessa Morgan. Age 34, address in Raleigh, relationship, niece. Marcus looked up sharply. Niece? Lillian froze. The reaction was immediate. Too immediate. Her book lowered slowly. Mama. She didn't answer. Mama, who is Tessa Morgan? Color drained from her face. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she whispered a name Marcus had never heard before. Vivian. Who is Vivian? Lillian closed her eyes. My sister. The room went silent. Marcus stared at her. He knew every branch of the family tree he had ever been told. Every aunt, every uncle, every cousin. But not Vivian. Never Vivian. The realization settled over him slowly. Someone had not only hidden financial records, someone had hidden people. And if Tessa Morgan was Vivian's daughter, then an entire part of the family's history had been buried for years. Lillian's hands began to tremble. Marcus moved closer. What happened? A tear rolled down her cheek. I hoped you'd never have to know. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him again, because suddenly the forged signature was no longer the only secret, and whatever happened between Lillian and this forgotten sister was important enough that his mother had spent years pretending Vivian never existed. Marcus sat across from his mother long after she stopped speaking. The hotel room felt smaller now, not because of the walls, because of the silence between them. A sister, an entire sister. Someone named Vivian had existed all these years, and Marcus had never heard her name once. Lillian stared at her hands. The skin looked thin and fragile under the lamplight. For the first time since coming home, Marcus understood that Denise was not the beginning of this story. She was somewhere in the middle. What happened between you and Vivian? He asked quietly. Lillian closed her eyes. It doesn't matter anymore. It matters if someone hid her from me. A tear slipped down her cheek. We were family. Were? We haven't spoken in many years. Marcus waited. Eventually she looked toward the window. After our father died, there was a disagreement about his estate. A disagreement? Lillian gave a sad laugh. That's a polite word. The bitterness in her voice surprised him. Not because it existed, because it was still alive, even now. After all these years, Marcus leaned forward. Did you fight? No, the answer came instantly. Too instantly. She saw the doubt on his face. We didn't fight. Other people did. People chose sides. Things were said, then more things were said. Eventually there was nothing left except distance. Marcus thought about Denise. Old resentment, old stories, old wounds. The kind families carried for decades. What happened to Vivian? Lillian looked away. I don't know. You don't know where your own sister lives? No. Again, Marcus wasn't sure he believed her. Not entirely. Before he could ask more questions, his phone buzzed. An email. From his attorney. Subject line. Marcus opened the attachment. Several scanned pages appeared. Count filings, trust paperwork, witness verification forms. Then one page caught his attention immediately. The witness information sheet. Tessa Morgan. Age 34, occupation hospice administrator, address Raleigh, North Carolina. Marcus read it twice, then 3 times. Tessa wasn't some distant relative. She was close. Close enough to serve as a witness. Close enough to know something, and apparently close enough to be involved in whatever had happened. Lillian noticed his expression. You found something. Marcus turned the laptop toward her. The moment she saw Tessa's name, her shoulders sank. Not surprise, recognition. Mama. Lillian didn't answer. Who is she? For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, Vivian's daughter. Marcus sat back slowly. The room became very quiet. Tessa wasn't a rumor. She wasn't a forgotten cousin buried somewhere in old family stories. She was real, living less than 3 hours away, and somehow connected to the trust, connected to Denise, connected to the witness signature, connected to everything. Why didn't you tell me about her? Lillian looked exhausted. Because I thought that part of the family was gone. Marcus shook his head. People don't just disappear. Sometimes they did. The thought arrived before he could stop it. His mother had spent years disappearing while still living in her own house. The next morning Marcus drove to Raleigh. Lillian wanted to come, he refused. Not because he wanted control. Because she looked tired. Because every mile seemed harder on her than the one before. Because for once someone needed to protect her instead of asking her to endure more. After a brief argument, she finally agreed to stay at the hotel. Call me, she said. I will. Whatever happens, I promise. The drive gave Marcus too much time to think. About Vivian, about Denise, about the fixed signature, about Carl Jennings, and about the strange sentence Carl had spoken before trying to take it back. There are things about this family you may not understand. The words kept returning, as if Carl knew exactly where all this would lead. By early afternoon, Marcus arrived at the hospice center listed on Tessa's employment records. The building sat on a quiet street lined with oak trees. Nothing dramatic, nothing mysterious. Just a place where people worked, where families visited, where life continued. Inside, a receptionist greeted him politely. I'm looking for Tessa Morgan. The woman hesitated. Do you have an appointment? No. May I ask who's looking for her? Pause. The word felt strange. A few minutes later a woman appeared from a hallway, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back neatly, professional clothes, tired eyes. She stopped walking the moment she saw him. Marcus recognized something immediately. Not familiarity, recognition. She knew who he was, and that meant she had been expecting this day eventually. Tessa, he asked. Her expression hardened. Marcus Hale, not a question, a statement. Neither moved for several seconds. Then she nodded toward the exit outside. They sat at a picnic table beneath a tree behind the building. Traffic hummed somewhere in the distance. Tessa folded her arms. What do you want? Marcus decided honesty was the fastest path. My mother is living out of a box. Something flickered across her face. Pain, guilt. Then it vanished. Is she safe now? She is. Tessa looked away. For the first time, Marcus saw genuine relief, which raised another question. If she cared, why had she stayed silent? You were listed as a witness on trust documents. Tessa immediately became guarded again. I know. Why? No comment. My mother lost control of her home. No comment. Someone forged my identity. Still nothing. Marcus exhaled slowly. You knew this would happen eventually. Tessa laughed without humor. No. I knew Denise would eventually go too far. That answer landed heavily. Marcus watched her carefully. You don't seem surprised. I'm not. Then tell me what's going on. Tessa stared toward the parking lot. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded tired. You think this started with your mother's house? Marcus said. You think Denise suddenly became greedy? More silence. Then Tessa looked directly at him. Her eyes carried years of anger, years of history, years Marcus knew nothing about. My mother spent half her life paying for mistakes she didn't make. Marcus frowned. What does that have to do with Lillian? Tessa's jaw tightened everything. For the first time since meeting her, real emotion broke through her composure. Not hatred, hurt, deep hurt, the kind people carried for decades. My mother died believing her own family abandoned her. Marcus felt something shift. The story was growing larger again. Every answer seemed to uncover another layer beneath it. Tessa, no. She stood. We're not doing this today. Marcus rose. I need the truth. Tessa laughed bitterly. The truth? She reached into her bag, pulled out an old envelope, and held it in front of him. The paper looked worn, yellowed with age, protected carefully for years. Marcus noticed one thing immediately. The handwriting. Lillian's. Tessa saw him recognize it. Then she said the words that stopped him cold. You want to know why Denise hates your mother? She pressed the envelope into his hands. Start by reading the letter your mother sent my mother the day the family broke apart. Marcus didn't open the envelope until he reached his hotel room. The drive back from Raleigh felt longer than the trip there. Every mile seemed filled with questions that refused to settle. Tessa's anger had felt real, not performed, not manipulated. Whatever happened between Vivian and the rest of the family had left scars that still hadn't healed. Lillian was sitting at the small table when he entered. She looked up immediately. Did you find her? Marcus set his keys down. Yes. Lillian's hands tightened around her coffee cup. For a moment she looked relieved, then worried, then guilty. All three emotions passed across her face so quickly that Marcus almost missed them. How is she? Lillian asked. She wouldn't tell me much. The answer wasn't entirely true, but it was close enough. Marcus placed the old envelope on the table. The color drained from Lillian's face. She recognized it instantly. Where did you get that, Tessa? Lillian looked away, not at the envelope, at the window. As if she already knew what was inside, Marcus sat down across from her. Do you want to tell me what's in it before I read it? A long silence followed. Finally, she shook her head. No, why? Because whatever you think happened, it wasn't that simple. Marcus heard the pain in her voice, but he also heard something else, fear. Not fear of Denise, fear of the past. When Lillian stood and quietly retreated to the bedroom area of the suite, Marcus remained at the table. Then he opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The paper had yellowed with age, but the writing remained clear. Dear Vivian, I know you'll never forgive me for this. The first sentence immediately pulled him in. He continued reading. The letter spoke of arguments after their father's death, family meetings, disagreements over property and responsibility, relatives taking sides. None of it surprised him. Families broke apart over far less. But then the tone changed. The final paragraphs felt different, more personal, more desperate. I never wanted you to leave. I never wanted anyone to choose between us. I know you believe I betrayed you, but one day I hope you'll understand why I made the decision I did. Marcus read that sentence twice. The decision, not an argument, not a misunderstanding, a decision. Something specific had happened, something large enough to destroy a family. His eyes moved to the next line and stopped. The bottom portion of the page had been torn away. Cleanly, deliberately, the letter ended in the middle of a sentence. Marcus stared at it. Someone had removed part of the letter. Not accidentally, purposefully. The missing section mattered. Maybe it contained the explanation. Maybe it contained a name. Maybe it contained the truth. But it was gone. He carefully placed the letter back inside the envelope. Then he noticed something else. A faint indentation on the final page, as though additional pages had once been attached, more than one. The envelope had carried an entire correspondence at some point. Now only fragments remained. Marcus took photographs of everything. Every page, every mark, every tear. Then he sent copies to his attorney. Evidence, no matter how small. Around midnight his phone buzzed. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar number. Raleigh area code. Marcus answered. Tessa? Silence, then a sigh. You're smarter than I expected. Most people who threaten me don't call after dark. I'm not threatening you. No? Tessa sounded tired. No. For several seconds neither spoke. Finally she said, You read it. The letter was incomplete. I know. Who tore it? I don't know. Marcus wasn't sure he believed that. Tessa. What? Why were you a witness on those trust papers? Silence again, longer this time. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded distant. Because Denise asked me. That's it, no. Marcus waited. I thought I was helping. The honesty surprised him. Helping who? My family. The answer only created more questions. Before he could ask them, Tessa spoke again. You think Denise is the villain, isn't she? Another pause. Denise is part of the problem. Part of the problem, not the entire problem. The distinction mattered. Marcus sat straighter. What does that mean? You still don't understand what happened between Vivian and Lillian? Then tell me. No, Tessa, no. The sharpness in her voice stopped him. When she spoke again, she sounded calmer. Some truths belong to the people who lived them. The line disconnected. Marcus stared at the dark screen. Then he noticed a text message arriving seconds later. One sentence. Ask your mother why Vivian never came home. The rest of the night passed without sleep. The next morning, Marcus decided to stop circling the truth. He found Lillian sitting in the hotel breakfast area, quietly reading a newspaper she probably wasn't really reading. He sat down across from her. We need to talk. She folded the paper. I know. Marcus placed the letter on the table. Lillian's eyes filled immediately. You wrote this? Yes, the last page is missing. She nodded. I know. Why? No answer. Who removed it? Still nothing. Marcus took a breath, then another. Tessa asked me to find out why Vivian never came home. The words landed heavily. Lillian's shoulders slumped. For several moments she simply stared at the tabletop. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded older than before. Because she believed I chose someone else over her. Marcus frowned. What does that mean? Tears appeared in her eyes. I tried to explain. Explain what? Why I made the choice. Marcus felt frustration building. Every answer created another locked door. What choice? Lillian pressed her palms together, as if steadying herself, as if preparing to touch a wound she had avoided for decades. Then she whispered, the choice that destroyed our family. Marcus stared at her, neither moved. The breakfast room buzzed quietly around them. Coffee cups clinked, people chatted, a television played muted morning news, and yet the world seemed very far away. What choice? He repeated. Lillian looked directly into his eyes. The sadness there felt endless. Then she said something that made his heart stop. It wasn't about the inheritance. Marcus blinked. What? It was never about the inheritance. Every story he had heard pointed toward money, property, land, family assets, everything. But now she was telling him the central conflict wasn't about any of those things. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him again. If the inheritance wasn't the reason Vivian disappeared, then the entire history of the family had been built around a lie. And somewhere inside that lie was the reason Denise hated Lillian enough to take her home, her money, and nearly her dignity. Lillian opened her mouth to continue. Before she could speak, Marcus's phone rang. His attorney. Marcus answered immediately. What is it? The attorney didn't waste time. I found something in the archived county filings. Marcus sat upright. What? A sealed family record connected to Vivian. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. What kind of record? There was a pause. Then the attorney said quietly, one that should have been disclosed years ago but somehow wasn't. Marcus ended the call and immediately stepped away from the breakfast table. His attorney's tone had been different. Not excited, concerned, the kind of voice professionals used when they discovered something that could change an entire case. I'll be back, he told Lillian. She looked frightened. Marcus, I just need details. But he already knew this wasn't just about details. He stepped outside the hotel and called back. The attorney answered immediately. What exactly did you find? A sealed supplemental filing attached to older family court records. Marcus leaned against the railing. What kind of filing? That's the problem. Parts of it were removed years ago. His stomach tightened. Removed by who? We don't know. The attorney paused. But someone accessed the file multiple times over the years. Marcus felt a chill. Court records didn't simply vanish. Not without reason. Can you get the entire file? I'm trying. What does it involve? Another pause. Then the attorney lowered his voice. Vivian. Marcus closed his eyes. Everything kept leading back to the same name. Vivian. The sister nobody discussed. The woman who disappeared from the family. The woman whose daughter seemed trapped between guilt and resentment. What about her? The record suggests she signed legal documents transferring long-term responsibility for an adult family member. Marcus frowned. An adult dependent? Possibly. The attorney sounded cautious. We won't know until we recover the missing pages. When the call ended, Marcus stood motionless. The words echoed inside his head. Long-term responsibility, adult family member, not inheritance. Not property, not money, something else, something personal, something that could explain why emotions ran deeper than financial loss. Back inside, Lillian was waiting. She didn't ask what the attorney found. Instead, she asked a different question. Did Tessa hate me? Marcus looked at her. The vulnerability in her eyes hurt more than anger would have. I don't think she hates you. Lillian gave a sad smile. That's not the same thing. It wasn't. Marcus sat across from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he made a decision. No more circling. No more partial truths. Mama, was Denise always like this? The question seemed to surprise her. Lillian thought for several seconds. No. When did she change? I don't know. Marcus wasn't satisfied. You do, she looked down. People don't change all at once. That answer felt real. More real than anything else she had said. She wasn't defending Denise, she was grieving her. There were years when she was kind, Lillian continued quietly. Years when she visited, years when she helped. Then what happened? Lillian's eyes filled with tears. Resentment. One word. Simple. Heavy. Marcus remembered Tessa saying nearly the same thing. Resentment. Not greed. Not at first. Something older. Something that had grown over time. What was she resentful about? Lillian closed her eyes. Me. The answer came immediately. Too immediately, like she had carried it for years. Before Marcus could ask more, his phone buzzed again. A text message. Unknown number. His body tensed. He opened it. Stop digging into Vivian. Nothing good comes from old graves. Marcus stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. You already have your mother's house. Leave the rest alone. The sender remained anonymous, but the timing felt deliberate. Someone knew exactly what he was investigating. Someone was watching. He didn't show the messages to Lillian. Not yet. Instead, he saved screenshots and forwarded everything to his attorney. Evidence. Always evidence. That afternoon he drove back to the family property, not to confront Denise, not yet. He wanted documents. Proof. Something concrete. The house looked exactly as he remembered from days earlier. Except now it felt different. Now he knew the walls contained secrets older than the financial fraud. Ray's truck sat in the driveway. Denise's car was gone. Marcus knocked. Ray answered. His face immediately tightened. What do you want? Marcus remained calm. A conversation, no. Marcus didn't move. Neither did Ray. Finally, Ray sighed. You get 5 minutes. Inside, the house smelled of stale coffee and old furniture polish. Marcus noticed several framed family photographs had disappeared from the walls. Interesting. Very interesting. People removed things when they became nervous. What happened to the pictures? Ray glanced toward the hallway. No idea. A lie. An obvious one. Marcus walked slowly through the living room, then stopped. A faint rectangular mark remained on one wall. Something large had hung there recently. A photograph, a painting, something important. What was here? Ray crossed his arms. Nothing. Marcus smiled. The answer confirmed everything. Then his eyes landed on a cardboard box near the staircase. Old papers, folders, receipts, random household documents. Most people would overlook it. Marcus didn't. He stepped toward it. Ray moved immediately. Too quickly, too defensively. You don't need to look through that. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Why not? It's private. That single word practically screamed the opposite. Marcus looked directly at him. Did Denise tell you to hide things? Ray's jaw tightened. Silence. Marcus pressed. You know this is going to come out eventually. Still nothing. Then something unexpected happened. Ray sat down, his shoulders slumped. For the first time he looked tired. Not defensive, not angry, just exhausted. You think Denise planned all this? Marcus waited, didn't she? Ray rubbed his forehead. No. The answer caught Marcus off guard. What does that mean? It means things were already broken before Denise touched anything. Ray stared at the floor. And once people start believing they've been cheated, they justify almost anything. Marcus listened carefully. Every word mattered. Cheated out of what? Ray laughed bitterly. There it is. What? The question nobody answers. Marcus stepped closer, then answer it. For several seconds Ray seemed tempted. Really tempted. Then fear returned. Marcus saw it happen. Something shut down behind his eyes. No. The moment passed. Whatever truth Ray nearly revealed had scared him. Marcus recognized that look. People showed it when the truth was bigger than the lie. Marcus turned to leave. Then he noticed something sticking from beneath the cardboard box, a corner of a photograph, just barely visible. Ray noticed it too. Too late, Marcus pulled it free. The photograph was old. Not ancient, but old. 4 adults stood together on a front porch. Lillian, Vivian, a younger Denise, and an unfamiliar man. Marcus studied the image. Everyone looked serious, except Vivian. She was smiling. One hand rested on the shoulder of the unknown man beside her. On the back of the photograph, someone had written a date and a sentence. Marcus read it twice. Then a third time. His pulse quickened, because beneath the date in faded blue ink were the words, "The day we agreed never to tell Marcus the truth." The room went silent. Marcus slowly lifted his eyes toward Ray, and for the first time since entering the house, Ray looked genuinely terrified. Ray's face lost what little color remained in it. For several seconds neither man spoke. Marcus held the photograph in both hands, staring at the words written on the back. The day we agreed never to tell Marcus the truth. The sentence felt heavier than any legal document he had seen. He looked again at the 4 adults in the picture. Lillian, Vivian, Denise, the unknown man, all standing together, all connected to a secret, and apparently all involved in keeping it from him. Who wrote this? Marcus asked. Ray swallowed. I don't know, it was a terrible lie. Marcus didn't even bother responding. He simply slipped the photograph into his jacket pocket. You can't take that. I absolutely can. Ray stood abruptly. Marcus, no. For the first time, Marcus's voice turned hard. I'm done protecting everyone else's secrets while my mother pays the price. The words hung in the air. Ray looked away. Guilty people often did. Marcus left before the conversation could become another dead end. Outside, he immediately photographed both sides of the picture and sent copies to his attorney. Then he sent another copy to Tessa. 3 minutes later, his phone rang. She sounded angry before he even spoke. Where did you get that, Ray? Silence. Then a curse under her breath. You shouldn't have that. Apparently I should. Tessa didn't argue. Instead, she asked the question Marcus expected. Did you read the back? Another silence, longer this time. Finally she exhaled. So now you know. No. Marcus stopped beside his truck. I know. There's a secret. I don't know what it is. Tessa sounded exhausted. You still think you're chasing one story. What does that mean? It means your mother's house isn't the center of this. Marcus leaned against the truck door. Then what is? You. The answer hit harder than expected. Before he could respond, Tessa continued. The house, the trust, Denise, the money, all of it connects to something older. What? But Tessa didn't answer. Instead, she asked, did you recognize the man in the photograph? Marcus thought about it. No, I figured. Who is he? Another pause. Then she said quietly, someone Denise never wanted you asking about. The call ended before Marcus could stop her. By the time he returned to the hotel, frustration had become determination. Too many people knew pieces of the truth. Too many people were deciding what he deserved to know. That ended now. He found Lillian resting on the sofa. She looked better physically than she had a week earlier. regular meals, medication, sleep, yet emotionally she seemed more fragile than ever. When she saw his expression, she immediately knew something had happened. "What is it?" Marcus sat across from her. Then he placed the photograph on the table. Lillian froze. The reaction was instant. Not surprise, recognition, pain, deep pain. Her finger, "Did you find this?" "At the house." Lillian picked it up carefully, like something breakable. For a long moment she simply stared at Vivian's face. Then tears appeared, not dramatic tears, quiet ones. "The kind people carried for decades, Mama." She didn't answer. Marcus waited. Eventually she touched the unknown man's image, very gently, as though touching a memory. "Who is he?" The question seemed to pull her back into the room. Her eyes closed, then opened again. "His name was Daniel." Marcus waited. Nothing more came. "Daniel who?" "I don't know if I should tell you." The answer immediately angered him. Not because she was trying to hurt him, because she was still protecting something, even now, after everything. "Mama, people forged documents." She looked down. "Yes, someone stole from you." A small nod. "They pushed you onto your own porch." Another nod. "And you're still protecting them." The words landed harder than he intended. Lillian looked wounded. Marcus regretted it instantly. But he couldn't take it back. For a moment neither spoke. Then she whispered, "I'm not protecting them." "Then tell me." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'm protecting you." The statement stunned him. Because it felt genuine. Not manipulative, not evasive, genuine, and somehow that made everything worse. What could possibly be so bad that you're still hiding it? Lillian stared at the photograph, then at Marcus, then away again. "I need time." Marcus almost laughed, not from humor, from disbelief. Time. The family had spent decades asking for time, and every year had only created more damage. His phone vibrated, a message from his attorney. "Call me immediately." Marcus stepped into the hallway and dialed. The attorney answered on the first ring. "I got access." Marcus's pulse quickened. "To the sealed file? Part of it. What does it say?" Paper rustled. The attorney sounded unsettled. "Marcus, before I continue, I need to ask something." "What?" "Has anyone ever discussed adult guardianship records with you?" Marcus frowned. "No informal family custody agreements, no private dependency arrangements." "No." A long pause followed. Then the attorney spoke carefully. "The documents suggest Vivian transferred responsibility for an adult dependent to Lillian years ago." Marcus felt confusion immediately. "An adult dependent? That's what the file indicates." "Who?" "We don't know yet." The answer made no sense. Marcus was 39. Vivian had been estranged for decades. Who was this adult, and why had responsibility been transferred? The attorney continued. "Some pages are still missing." "Convenient. Very." Marcus rubbed his forehead. "Anything else?" Another pause. Then the attorney lowered his voice. "There's a name." Marcus froze. "What name?" "Daniel Mercer." Marcus stared at the parking lot outside the hotel. The same name from the photograph. Daniel, the unknown man. Suddenly multiple pieces connected. Not completely, but enough. Daniel mattered. Vivian mattered. The sealed records mattered, and somehow all three connected to him. What was Daniel's role? "We don't know yet." Marcus exhaled slowly. Everything led to another locked door. Then the attorney added something else. Something even stranger. "The file references a second record." "What kind?" "We haven't recovered it." Marcus closed his eyes. Of course they hadn't. "But there's a note attached." "What note?" The attorney hesitated. Then he read directly from the document. "Related identity records sealed by family request." Marcus opened his eyes. Identity records. Not property, not inheritance, identity. His heart began to pound, because for the first time the possibility became impossible to ignore. The secret wasn't only about Vivian, it wasn't only about Denise, and it wasn't only about the house. The secret might be about who he really was. When Marcus returned to the room, Lillian was standing by the window holding the photograph. She looked small, tired, defeated, as though she knew exactly which truth was approaching. Marcus studied her carefully. Then he noticed something he hadn't seen before, a tiny handwritten inscription along the white border of the photograph, almost invisible, almost hidden. He stepped closer and took the picture gently from her hands. The writing was faded, but still readable. 3 names, Lillian, Vivian, Daniel, and beneath them in smaller handwriting, "For family no matter what the records say." Marcus felt his breath catch. Slowly, he looked up at his mother, and for the first time, she couldn't meet his eyes. Marcus held the photograph between his fingers and stared at the faded inscription. For family, no matter what the records say. The words seemed to echo through the room. Lillian still couldn't look at him. That hurt more than any document, more than Denise's betrayal, more than the forged signatures. Because this was his mother. The woman who had loved him, worried about him, waited for him, and slept on a porch rather than burden him with her pain. And now she looked terrified of telling him the truth. "Mama," his voice softened, "you need to stop protecting me." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I'm not protecting you from the truth." "Then what are you protecting me from?" The answer came immediately. "The consequences." Marcus felt a chill. Consequences. Not facts, not records, consequences. Before he could respond, she slowly sat down. Her hands trembled slightly, not from age alone, from memory, from exhaustion, from years of carrying something she had never intended to reveal. "You deserve answers," she said quietly, "then give them to me." Lillian looked toward the photograph again, toward Daniel's face, and for a moment Marcus thought she would finally tell him everything. Instead she asked a question. "Do you remember your father?" Marcus frowned. The question caught him off guard. "Of course, what do you remember?" Marcus thought about it. Not many details. A calm man, strong hands, a quiet laugh, someone who worked hard and rarely spoke about himself. The memories felt strangely incomplete, like old photographs missing pieces. "He loved you," Lillian whispered. "I know, he truly did." Marcus studied her face. Something about the way she said it felt unusual, as though she needed him to understand something specific, something she wasn't yet saying. His phone vibrated, a message from his attorney. "We recovered another page, call when possible." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Another piece, another fragment, always another fragment. An hour later he met his attorney in person. The office conference room felt sterile compared to the emotional chaos surrounding the case. His attorney slid a photocopy across the table. "We found this attached to a filing index." Marcus immediately recognized the name, Vivian. The document wasn't complete. The top portion had been removed, but the remaining text was enough to raise new questions. There were references to responsibility, medical oversight, guardianship concerns, family agreement, and one sentence that immediately caught his attention. "Primary responsibility voluntarily accepted by Lillian Hale." Marcus looked up. "What does this mean?" "We don't know yet." The attorney folded his hands. "But it suggests your mother agreed to take legal responsibility for someone who—" "We still don't have that page." Marcus exhaled sharply. Every important answer seemed to live on missing pages. "Any sign of who removed them?" "No." The attorney hesitated. "However, we discovered something else." Marcus waited. "The file was accessed approximately 11 years ago." "By who?" "We're requesting records." 11 years. The timing bothered him immediately. Too recent, too deliberate. Someone had reopened old secrets long before Denise took control of the house. Which meant this wasn't a spontaneous fraud. It was connected to something much older, something someone wanted hidden. When Marcus left the office, he drove directly to Raleigh, not to confront Tessa, to understand her, because every new discovery made one thing clear. Tessa knew far more than she admitted. He found her finishing a shift outside the hospice center. She looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that came from caring for other people's grief every day. When she saw him, she didn't look surprised, only resigned. "You found something." Marcus nodded. "A sealed file." Tessa laughed bitterly. "Of course you did. You knew about it. I knew pieces." Marcus stepped closer. What was Vivian hiding? The question visibly affected her. For the first time, her composure cracked. "Not much, just enough. My mother wasn't hiding from the family." Marcus stayed silent. She was hiding from what the family became. The answer felt important, but incomplete, like everything else. "Tessa." She looked away. "My mother spent years believing she ruined everything." Marcus frowned. "Ruined what? People?" The answer made no sense, yet the pain behind it was unmistakable. Tessa sat down on a nearby bench. For several moments she stared at the pavement, then she spoke quietly. "When my mother died, she left boxes." Marcus listened carefully. "Letters, records, journals." His pulse quickened. "You still have them?" "Some." That single word changed everything. "Some." Not all, meaning others had disappeared, or been taken, or destroyed. "Did Denise see them?" Tessa nodded. "Years ago." Marcus felt immediate tension. "Why?" "Because Denise was looking for something." "What?" Tessa laughed softly. The sound carried no humor. The same thing you're looking for now. The truth. Marcus sat beside her. For the first time, neither argued, neither accused. They were simply two people standing in the wreckage of decisions made decades earlier. Finally, Tessa reached into her purse. She removed a small folded piece of paper, old, fragile, protected. She held it for several seconds before handing it over. My mother kept this hidden. Marcus unfolded it carefully. The handwriting wasn't Vivian's. It wasn't Lillian's either. A man's handwriting, strong, deliberate. At the bottom was a signature. Daniel Mercer. Marcus's heart began pounding. Above the signature sat only 2 sentences. The rest of the page had been torn away. If anything happens to me, Lillian knows the truth. One day Marcus deserves to know who he really belongs to. The world seemed to tilt. Marcus stared at the paper, again and again. Then he slowly looked at Tessa. Neither spoke. They didn't need to, because for the first time, the secret wasn't merely implied. It was staring directly at them, not complete, not proven, but undeniable. Somewhere behind the missing records, missing pages, hidden agreements, and decades of silence lived a truth about Marcus himself. A truth Daniel Mercer had wanted revealed, and a truth someone else had spent years making sure stayed buried. As the evening sun disappeared behind the trees, Tessa finally broke the silence. There was one more thing in my mother's boxes. Marcus looked up immediately. What? Tessa hesitated. Fear crossed her face, real fear. The kind that came when a secret was finally too close. Then she whispered, "It wasn't a letter." Marcus waited. It was a DNA report, and before he could ask another question, she added the words that stopped his heart. "I think someone switched the original results." The DNA report was not accepted blindly. Neither Marcus nor Tessa wanted another secret built on assumptions. The sample records had to be verified. Old documents had to be matched. Attorneys reviewed the chain of custody. The court proceedings involving the trust continued at the same time, moving through hearings, filings, and investigations. Weeks passed, then months. The answers came slowly, but they came. The final findings confirmed that the trust transfer had been deeply flawed. Questions surrounding consent, financial control, and the forged verification process were serious enough that the court ordered the arrangement set aside pending proper legal procedures. Temporary control of Lillian's finances and property was returned to her with protective oversight in place. Denise and Ray were removed from managing her accounts. Civil claims followed. Investigators continued examining the money trail. No dramatic handcuffs appeared overnight. No instant justice arrived in a single afternoon. But consequences had finally begun. Carl Jennings faced disciplinary proceedings connected to the notary irregularities. For the first time in years, people who had controlled the story were being forced to answer questions instead of avoiding them. And then came the truth Marcus had been chasing. The verified records showed that Daniel Mercer was his biological father. Years earlier, Daniel had become seriously ill. During that period, Vivian had struggled with circumstances she could not manage alone. The sealed records and missing pages revealed what had actually happened. Lillian and her late husband had stepped forward. Not temporarily, not reluctantly. They had accepted legal responsibility for Marcus and raised him as their own family. Daniel had known, Vivian had known, Lillian had known, even Denise had known. The secret had never been about shame. It had been about fear. Fear that one day Marcus would learn the truth and decide that blood mattered more than love. Fear that he would see Lillian differently. Fear that everything she had sacrificed would somehow become less real. When Marcus heard the full story, he sat quietly for a long time. Lillian sat across from him, twisting a handkerchief in her hands. She looked more frightened than she had during any legal hearing, more frightened than she had been on the porch. Because this was the loss she had feared for decades. Not the house, not the money, him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Marcus looked up. "For what?" "For not telling you." Tears filled her eyes. "I was afraid." The honesty in her voice left no room for anger. Only sadness, only love. "I thought if you knew," her voice broke. "I thought maybe you wouldn't be mine anymore." Marcus stared at her, then he slowly moved his chair closer. "You waited for me for 8 years. Lillian lowered her eyes. "You protected me when nobody else would." A tear rolled down her cheek. "You slept on a porch rather than ask me for help because you didn't want to burden me." She began crying quietly. Marcus took her hands. "Mama, if blood was all that mattered, none of that would exist. Lillian looked at him. For the first time, the fear inside her seemed to loosen. "You chose me," Marcus said softly. "You always belonged to me." "No," he shook his head. "I belonged to you because you chose me." Neither spoke after that. They simply sat together while years of silence finally began to disappear. Not instantly, not perfectly, but honestly. The legal matters continued. Denise eventually asked to meet Marcus. The meeting took place in a lawyer's office. No shouting, no dramatic confrontation, just two exhausted people sitting across from each other. Denise admitted that resentment had consumed her for years. She had convinced herself that Lillian had taken something from her family. By the time she realized the truth, she had already justified too many terrible choices. She apologized. Marcus listened, then he answered carefully, "I can accept that you're sorry." Hope appeared briefly in her eyes. But that doesn't erase what happened. The hope faded. Marcus wasn't cruel. He wasn't seeking revenge. But forgiveness and accountability were not the same thing. Denise finally nodded. For the first time, she seemed to understand. Months later, workers began repairing the Hale property. Marcus refused to tear the old porch down. Many people suggested it. He never considered it. Instead, he rebuilt it. New railings, new flooring, a proper roof, soft lighting, a comfortable chair that Lillian personally chose. The porch remained exactly where it had always been. Only now it meant something different. Not neglect, not abandonment, survival. One afternoon, Tessa arrived carrying a box of old family photographs. The reunion was awkward, painful in places, quiet in others. Neither woman pretended the past had not happened. Neither demanded instant healing. They simply started telling the truth. Sometimes that was enough. Using recovered funds only after the legal process permitted it, Marcus established a small elder care legal assistance program in Lillian Hale's name. Nothing grand, nothing designed for attention. Just practical help for older adults facing financial exploitation or housing insecurity. The kind of help his mother should have received sooner. Years later, people in town still talked about the case. Some focused on the money, some focused on the fraud. Marcus never did. When he thought about it, he remembered a porch, an empty medicine bottle, a frightened woman pretending she was fine, and the moment he almost arrived too late. One evening he stood outside the renovated house while Lillian laughed inside with Tessa. The sound drifted through the open window. Warm, ordinary, precious. Marcus reached over and switched on the porch light. The soft glow spread across the steps. For a moment he stood there watching it, not because someone was waiting outside anymore, but because she was finally safe inside, and because some lights deserve to stay on. If this story moved you, share it with someone who still has time to check on the person who once checked on them.